On the 20th of July, 1818, Lieutenant Colonel Leicester, who formerly belonged to the same regiment with Sir Hudson Lowe, and who now holds the temporary and local rank of lieutenant colonel by virtue of his sinecure office of inspector of militia with a salary of £1,000 per annum, was sent by Sir Hudson Lowe as orderly officer to Longwood. He was accompanied by a Lieutenant Jackson of the Staff Corps, who had been previously employed as a surveillant of General Gorgo from the time of the latter's leaving Longwood until he finally quitted the island. Lieutenant Colonel Leicester was sent by directions of Adjutant General Sir Thomas Reed to Longwood with orders to take possession, in my absence, of the quarters which had been until then allotted for the orderly officer and surgeon, which he executed by seizing upon, when I was not present, and without having given any previous intimation, the common mess and storerooms, mess articles, all of which had been furnished by His Majesty's government for the joint mess of the orderly officer and surgeon. On my arrival at Longwood, I found his servants busily employed in removing any effects out of doors. The lieutenant colonel concluded his proceedings of that day by unequivocally avowing the nature, both of his own and Lieutenant Jackson's employment, to General Montalon, to whom he observed when he asked if there were two orderly officers, and for what purpose Lieutenant Jackson was sent to Longwood. Parce que quatre yeux sont mieux que deux. Because 4 eyes are better than 2. His outrageous conduct with regard to myself compelled me to send him the following letter. Longwood, 21st of July, 1818. Sir, having reflected upon the unprecedented and outrageous conduct which was put into execution towards me yesterday, I feel necessitated to make the following observations upon it. On my return from the town, where I had received a subpoena to attend as a witness, I found that you, during my absence, had appropriated to yourself, without any previous intimation or warning having been given to me, not only the rooms usually occupied by your predecessor, Captain Blakeney, but the common mess room and the storeroom of the orderly officer and surgeon, and as only such articles of plate, glass, etc., as were my private property, the detention of which would, by the laws, subject you to a criminal prosecution, have been sent to me. I am bound to conclude that a similar seizure has been made of the mess articles furnished by His Majesty's government for the orderly officer and surgeon at Longwood. This proceeding was followed by an intimation that your intention was not to mess with me, as your 3 predecessors had done. The customary rules of politeness and good breeding subsisting between gentlemen would, were I a person in an inferior and even in a low situation, instead of being, as I am, a British officer, as well as yourself, have suggested to a person possessing the feelings of a gentleman the propriety of giving a previous intimation to me of such intentions before precipitately dispossessing me of my share of the mess and storerooms, etc., and therefore obliging me to return at an unseasonable hour to town in order to procure a dinner. Such extraordinary and indelicate proceedings astonish me, and I beg to know, prior to coming to any final determination, whether they have been caused by a blind obedience to a superior authority, or were the effects of your own proper judgment and impulse. I am, sir, your most obedient servant, signed Barry E. O'Meara, Surgeon, Royal Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Leicester, Longwood. Reply, Longwood, July 21st. Sir, I have to acknowledge the receipt of your letter of this morning's date, as it contains a great variety of matter. Shall proceed to answer it in the briefest manner possible. You commence by saying that during your absence I appropriated to myself the mess room, without giving you any previous notice. Now, although your language in the remaining part of the paragraph is extremely violent and would well justify my refusal to answer it, yet I show how much you misconceived this business. I shall just give a simple detail of the true state of the case. In the first place, previous to my leaving Jamestown, I was desired by the Adjutant General to require Captain Blakeney to deliver over to me all the rooms belonging to the orderly officers' quarters stationed at Longwood. On my arrival here, I requested he would point them out to me, which he did, and they are those which I at present company, together with the storeroom adjoining. Captain Blakeney then called your servant and desired him to take your things away. A short time after this, Lieutenant Jackson asked your man, without my knowledge, to let a few things we were in want of, as our own baggage had not arrived. From this transaction, you found the indelicate insinuation that I had laid myself open to a prosecution at law. In respect to the mess you talk of, I never knew there was one established here. On the contrary, I understood Captain Blakeney dined with his regiment. But even if there had, surely I'm not accountable to any man. Why, I prefer keeping a table to myself. I now come to your last paragraph, in which you ask whether my conduct has been caused by a blind obedience to a superior authority or the effect of my own judgment. I must distinctly state that I should have the strongest objections to mess with an officer who lies so heavily under the displeasure of the governor, as I should be liable to hear observations which would inevitably destroy all the pleasures of social intercourse. I, sir, am your most obedient humble servant, signed T. Leicester, Lieutenant Colonel. B. O'Meara, Esquire. To the equivocation displayed in the above epistle, I answer as follows. Longwood, 22nd July, 1818. Sir, as you cannot deny the circumstance of your having, in my absence, seized upon the common mess and storerooms for the orderly officer and surgeon, without having given me any previous intimation, your endeavor to slur it over by stating that you, by directions of the Adjutant General, obtained possession of all the orderly officers' quarters. And you conclude your second paragraph by making an assertion which, for effrontery, is, I believe, until now without parallel, even in St. Helena, viz., that you never knew there was such a mess established here. This is about as correct as your willful misconstruction of a sentence in my letter, in which you assert that I found the indelicate insinuation that you have laid yourself open to a prosecution at law. I said that had you detained the articles of private property, which were not detained, and which have been selected out, and were the only objects sent to me, such conduct would have laid you open to a criminal prosecution, which is directly contrary to the misrepresentation made of it by you, as to living at the same table with you, sir. I never coveted it. I merely wanted to receive what I had a right to expect, and what I did not expect to experience from you, viz., gentlemanlike treatment. With respect to the insinuations with which you conclude your letter, I must remark that before hazarding them, you ought to have had some basis whereupon to ground them. Barry E. O'Meara, Surgeon R.N., to Lieutenant Colonel Leicester Longwood. Reply, Longwood, July 23rd. Sir, your letter of yesterday's date is worded in so very insolent and ungentlemanlike manner that I do not think it worthy of an answer, especially as I'm placed here as superior officer in the discharge of a most important duty. I therefore feel myself imperiously called upon to lay you 2 letters before His Excellency, the Governor, with my answer. I remain, sir, your obedient servant, T. Leicester, Lieutenant Colonel, to B. O'Meara, Esquire. On the same day, Lieutenant Colonel Leicester gave orders to the officers of the guard to examine minutely every bundle, packet, or parcel entering or going out of Longwood, not excepting even the wearing apparel of the ladies, giving us a reason that if this were not done, peradventure Bonaparte might be able to get some books, and declaring that he wished him, Bonaparte, in the possession of the devil, and intruding uninvited upon Madame Montsalon, and the declaration which he made there of his intention to spend a great part of his time in their house came rather malapropos after his avowal of quatre yeux sont mieux que deux. 4 eyes are better than 2. On the 22nd, the following protest against the farther residence of this gentleman at Longwood was pursuant to the orders of Napoleon written by Count Bertrand and addressed to Sir Hudson Lowe.